Okay then, King and Conqueror. Let's check it out then. Huh. King and Conqueror. This is a new mini-series developed by the BBC that came out on the 24th of August. Now, this is mostly a historical drama settled around the events of 1066, although it starts a few years beforehand, building up all the events that leads to, of course, that most pivotal year in our history. Now, of course, this is a fictional retelling, so this is not supposed to be a documentary. That said, maybe they should have, checked the history books a bit more often because, as I said, this is interesting, borderline weird. I'm not going to go on too much about the actual accuracy of events. I'll pick up on one or two, but I'm not going to go too much into that because, like I said, this is supposed to be a fictional retelling. And so because of that, obviously, you want to speed things up. You are going to condense some elements. You're going to simplify the intricacies and politics. But even then, they've made some very odd decisions, and there is a lot to cover. This is just a review of the first episode here, just the first one. I'll do some more episodes of the remaining ones as we go along. But yeah, we'll start off with the writing is odd. It's weird. It's really, really weird. And I don't know if it's because of the delivery or maybe because of the editing, but the whole episode is very choppy and stilted. A lot of the dialogue feels very stilted. Now, granted, I'll be fair. This is the first episode. In something like this, there's a lot of setup. You're trying to establish the places, the peoples, the names, the dynamics between all of them. I get that. So it is going to be a bit choppy. But the way they've gone about it is... it's not great. It's not bad. I've definitely seen worse. But I've also seen better. The thing they seem to be going about this, the way they seem to be structuring this show, is to be focusing primarily on Harold Godwinson and William, aka the Conqueror. These are our two sort of main pillars and sort of focus points of which the whole rest of the plot moves around. Now, on paper, this makes sense. You want a central premise. But here's the thing. You're picking two individuals who have large numbers of other characters wrapped around them. So even if you're trying to focus on these two, you've got all these other characters settled around. Also, I think they've kind of they shot themselves in the foot here with the timeline, because they are starting a good several years before 1066. In fact, they're starting assuming they stick to it accurately, they're starting 20 years beforehand with the crowning of King Edward. Now, for those of you who don't know, King Edward, aka Edward the Confessor, was the last king of the Saxons before Harold. Harold, yes, was technically the last king, but he was only king for a few months. King Edward the Confessor was of the House of Wessex and ruled England for about 20 odd years, and dying in 1066. And he's in the show. Didn't quite like how they portrayed him, but I'll get to that in a bit. And this, straight off the bat, I think confuses the events quite a bit, because you already have a lot of players in this event. 1066 is the year that Hastings happened. A lot happened that year alone. And quite frankly, you could just do a show just about that year and that'd be enough. But it seems that they're keen to to do all this stuff leading up to it. They're doing the crowning of Edward the Confessor. They're doing the invasion of Normandy by the French King Henry. All this other stuff, and that is a lot to pack in. So already, right off the bat, we are getting confused. There are so many characters at play, multiple plot lines, and they seem to be creating plot lines. The biggest of which is that William of Normandy, Duke William, who in the show is portrayed like, it seems to be, I try and make him out like he looks like, being in his late 30s, by the looks of it, he attends King Edward's coronation. But that never happened. The guy was 16 when it happened. He wasn't even fully Duke yet. Like, he spent the first 20 odd years of his life basically dodging assassins and fighting rebellions and members of his own family because he was the illegitimate son of the previous Duke. He had no time to go over to Edward Confessor's wedding, and there was no reason for him to be invited because he wasn't even that big a figure. So already they're adding unnecessary plot lines. I think what they're trying to do is that they're trying to establish very early on a dynamic between our two main characters, as Harold and William. And again, on paper, that makes sense. But again, when you're having to make up historical events to crowbar in these interactions, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Especially when the chemistry between the two, at least in this first episode, is so awkward. Like, the interactions between these two main characters, it's so wooden and it's so minimal. And it's weird because we've seen these actors in other shows. We've seen them perform brilliantly, so we know they're capable. But so far, again, this is the first episode. Maybe things warm up later, who knows? But it is extremely wooden. There is literally a scene where William is travelling through England to attend coronation, which, by the way, he shows up with 3 people in tow. Like, really? You're the Duke of Normandy. You haven't got a bigger entourage than that? You're just showing up like bring some more men, dude. Come on. You should have at least have a few servants with you, but no, apparently not. And he gets ambushed by bandits. And then, freaking out of nowhere, Harold shows up, rescues him. They have a brief interaction where William accuses Harold of stealing, to which Harold says no, and immediately taking money from the bandits. And they just go, all right, see you later, mate. And they just part. No, William's not going to explain who you are. Harold, you're not going to say anything to each other. Not going to question each other. Why? No, okay, you're just going to go off directions. Okay. Yeah. All right, fine. And so, yeah, the writing in this is very all over the place. I'm hoping it gets better. Because again, first episode, a lot of setup. Maybe now that we've established the players, the rest of the series will improve. I don't know. We shall see. So that was the writing. Not great, but not the worst. How about the actual, how does the show look? Well, for the most part, it looks like shit. The armour and costuming in this... Why do they keep doing this? We have seen this so many times now, over different shows. Why? When they're portraying people in the early medieval period, why do they always make them look like shit? They did not look like that. Why are they always dirty, never clean, wearing drab greys and browns and blues and not even blues, just browns and more browns, and the leather, the mother-hugging leather. Why do they cover them with this stuff? People did not wear leather like that, people. Come on. I get it. This seems like a weird thing to get this annoyed about. It may come across as, being nicky picky, whatever the expression is. But here's the thing, it's just frustrating when you have other shows like Downton Abbey and Bridgerton and all these other Regency era stuff, and they go to town with the costuming. They look amazing. Everything is highly detailed, beautifully coloured, tailored. It looks worn in. The people, the way they wear it looks authentic. And then you come to something like this, and they literally look like they just went to the local leather store, bought a bunch of scrap-ons, sewed them together, threw in some woolen cloaks, and just said, all right, guys, just help yourself to whatever, and smear some shit on your face, and then, you know, action. It's insulting. It's so insulting, and so needless as well. So needless. Okay. Let's break it down. Because clothing and armour is different. Let's look. Let's look at the armour first. Okay, there's not a huge amount of armour in this first episode. But what we did see was all over the place. And again, this is basic research, people. So for a start, the actual weapons themselves, the few swords we saw, the swords are fine. The swords looked okay. You know, they were early medieval swords, the way they were handling them and everything, they seemed fine. The armour itself, it's just odd. I mean, thank God there was no actual plate armour that I could see. I mean, I think there were a few people who had like weird gorgets here and there, which is weird. But it's just the way, like, people keep making up the armour designs. They keep thinking that in order for it to look cool or interesting or authentic, they gotta like put their own twist on it or add loads of extra leather and everything. It's like when you see all the soldiers, they're wearing ringmail suits, which is great, which is accurate. But then put all the stuff on top. They didn't have the stuff on top. And the stuff on top doesn't even look that nice. Half the helmets don't even look authentic or good. And yeah, and again, we only have a few bits and pieces here and there, but it just looks wrong. It just looks wrong. And there's a few times, and they thought they were being sneaky. They thought they were being sneaky. But I saw them. I saw you. Freaking guards in the background with massive kite shields and armour from like a century later. You think we would notice? Supposed to have round shields. That is what they had. Round shields were the common use of type. You know, yes, you had the longer abbreviated type for the Norman Knights. But we didn't even get to see those. I'm just nervous because if they're making mistakes like this early on, it doesn't bode well for when we get to the actual battle scenes later, but I will judge it on its own. Truth be told, the armour wasn't that bad. It wasn't great, but at least, you know, it wasn't, it's not Braveheart levels, at least not yet. Let's talk about the clothing. Oh! It's even worse! It's even worse! Why do these people all look like they're peasants? The costuming in this is so bad. It's so bad because everything just looks drab and grey and boring or really povertied. It's like these companies, big producers and production companies, they seem convinced that because this was done at an earlier time, people were really, you know, like they didn't know how to sew or dye their clothes or look nice. I swear, the guy playing Harold, he looks like a peasant. The majority of them look like peasants. Bearing in mind, the majority of the characters we interact with are all supposed to be kings and dukes and nobles. They should be walking around in these beautiful tunics, long wooden cloaks, jewellery, the hems of their clothing decorated with geometric patterns or swirling Celtic knot design. kinds. They should be arrayed in a rich symphony of purples, reds, blues, greens and yellows. And we get almost none of that. There's a couple of moments here and there, like the coronation scene itself. We see some quite nice cloaks on Edward. The bishop who does the coronation, his costume was pretty good, you know. But the coronation itself, half the time they show up and these are like the nobles and earls, the most powerful and rich members of English society. And it looks like a peasant, like farm village fete. It looks so bad. And I don't understand why. Because we know what they look like. Okay, we don't have photographs, but we figured it out. Like, look at these photos for comparison, right? I'm showing you a whole bunch of photos from Saxon reenactors, right? These are people whom, for this sort of thing, is a hobby. It's a pastime or a part-time job. Look at how good they look. And look at that compared to this high-budget, multi-million pound project. It is disgraceful. Like, it's not like we're dealing with an unknown variable here. We know how these people dressed. And what's weirder is that by making up all this stuff, like making up all this fake leather and these fur bits and all this weird tatty looking stuff, you're making it more expensive for yourself and it doesn't even look good. You know, this is what the show Vikings did a few years ago. Great weapons, great set design, but terrible costuming. The women in the show are a bit better, oddly enough. Like, we don't have many female characters, but they actually look a bit better. Like, the hair is nicely braided. You know, we see some nice, dresses and stuff with some nice richness into them. So they're not so bad, but even then, it doesn't look good. And when you have a show where everyone doesn't look particularly good and they literally look as though they've just been just chucked the clothes on them and then just walked on set, it breaks the immersion. When you're doing a historical show, costuming and setting and the way they present themselves is so important because it's all those little touches, the way they move, the way they talk to each other, the way they present themselves. It pulls you into the show. The idea is to transport the viewer to a different time and make them feel as if they're right there as these events are unfolding. And again, you give us a show about the bloody Tudors or the Regency era, they look great. They look great. Costuming is beautiful. But you give us something set in the Saxon era or the Viking era, they look like shit. I do not understand it because it makes it look like you don't care. And when you don't care, why should the audience care, you know? And even then, you know, history buffs like me, or history enthusiasts, I should say. I'm not really a buff, I'm more of an enthusiast. We love our history. We love this attention to detail. And there are thousands of bloggers and YouTubers and reviewers and just history enthusiasts out there. Stuff, you know, your target audience. And when we get annoyed, we get switched off from it. And you lose audience. But if you make the effort to make them look good, then those people will then celebrate that and pass it on and recommend it. And next thing you know, you've got hundreds of people promoting your product for free for no additional cost to yourself. It's a reciprocal relationship here, people. Make the effort there and you will be rewarded later on with viewers. Also, side note, why do they always look dirty? Why? Especially the guy playing Harold. Wash your face, Harold. I swear, every single scene, he looks like he's fell face flat in the mud. Wash your... The Saxons were some of the most cleanliest, most well-groomed people in the world at the time. And that's another thing. The hair and the face and everything looks terrible. Also, where's Harold's mustache? The Saxons were proud mustache-wearing people. The only one we've seen at the moment is William. So yeah, costuming. Not great. Okay, so final thoughts or summing up. Any other elements here? I really don't like the way they're doing Edward the Confessor. They're basically making him out to be this slightly unhinged, measly, mousy little mama's boy, with Lady Emma basically being the power behind the throne, and him kind of being like this slightly off-balance individual who is convinced he's hearing voices. Now, granted, Edward the Confessor is so named because he was really big on the church. He loved the church. He was a very devout man. This is true. He poured a lot of money into building churches or restoring churches that had been destroyed during the Viking raids of earlier decades. But they seem to have taken that idea and taken it into a bit of a weird direction. And it's also weird that they're making him so mousy, because the funny thing is that, again, whether or not they portray this in the show later on, we'll wait and see. But in terms of the actual events of history, a few years after his reign, Edward, along with some of the Earls of England, literally go to arrest his mother because she was, harbouring too much power and stealing money and treasure for herself. So if they do play it like that, why is he such a mummy's boy to begin with? I don't know. We'll wait and see, but I'm not thrilled with how they're doing him. Also, I'm a little confused with how they're setting up England itself, because there's this whole plot about how Mercia is attacking Wessex with Mercian coins and Mercian swords, and they're making it out like there's these different kingdoms, and it's like, I think they're getting their history a little mixed up here, because yes, a few centuries prior, you did have individual Saxon kingdoms throughout, England. But by this point, England has been a country, or a unified country, for some time now. Yes, you still had these regions of Wessex and Mercia and Northumberland and stuff, but they were ruled over by earls. They weren't separate kingdoms. And I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they weren't minting their own currency. Their own currency would have been minted by whoever was king at the time, not by the individual earls, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I might be wrong, but it feels a bit weird. I feel like they might be getting some of their history a bit mixed up. But it's only a minor point, a minor thing. Overall, that's all aside, as a first episode, this is definitely something of a mixed bag. It's not terrible, and they have left it on an interesting enough cliffhanger, won't say what, for those who want to watch it, to make me find out what happens next. I am intrigued, but I am also very, very nervous. So I'm going to watch the rest of the show now. I'm hoping to do some more reviews of each episode as it goes along. It's not the strongest opening, but it's not the worst. It just feels very unfocused and kind of slapdash. But again, I'm going to give it some leeway and some space for it to grow, on the condition of the fact that it is the first episode. I'm dearly hoping it's going to improve. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. That's all from me for now. Hope you all have a pleasant day. God bless.